Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to continue talking about the legislative branch of the government, and we are going to start by specifically talking about their powers in relations to weights and measures. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 gives Congress the power to fix the standard of weights and measures throughout the United States. The power reflects the absolute need for accurate, uniform gauges of time, distance, area, weight, volume, and the like. In 1838, Congress set the English system of pound, ounce, mile, foot, gallon, quart, and so on as the legal standards of weights and measures in this country. In 1866, Congress also legalized the use of the metric system of gram, meter, kilometer, liter, and so on. In 1901, Congress created the National Bureau of Standards in the Commerce Department, now known as the National Institute of Standards and Technology. The agency keeps the original standards for the United States. It is these standards by which all other measures in the United States are tested and corrected. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is naturalization. Citizens of one country become citizens of another through a process called naturalization. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 gives Congress the exclusive power to establish an uniform rule of naturalization. Today, the nation's population includes more than 14 million naturalized citizens. So, through the power of naturalization, the process by which a person becomes a United States citizen is actually determined by Congress. As a part of the system of checks and balances, the Constitution gives Congress several judicial powers. Thus, it has the power to create all of the federal courts below the Supreme Court and otherwise provide for the organization and composition of the federal judiciary. Congress also has the power to define federal crimes and set the punishments that may be imposed on those who violate federal law. The Constitution mentions only 4 offenses. 3 are found in Article 1, Section 8, counterfeiting, piracies, and felonies committed on the high seas, and offenses against international law. Treason is listed in Article 3, Section 3. In addition to these, Congress has used its implied powers to establish more than 100 other federal crimes. So these are the judicial powers of the legislative branch of the government. Now you might be thinking, isn't there a judicial branch? Why don't they have these powers? Well, it is through these powers of the legislative branch that the judicial branch gets its powers. Congress and foreign policy. The federal government has greater powers in the field of foreign affairs than it does in any other area of public policy. The 50 states that comprise the Union are not sovereign, so they have no standing in international law. In short, the Constitution does not allow them to take part in foreign relations. So it is through this rule that West Virginia can't sign an agreement with Japan. The United States can sign an agreement with Japan, but since West Virginia itself is not a sovereign state, meaning it actually does answer to someone outside of its borders, the federal government, so because they are not sovereign, they can't enter into agreements with other countries. Congress and foreign policy. The Constitution gives the President primary responsibility for the conduct of American foreign policy. As the Supreme Court put that point in a leading case, United States v. Curtis Wright Export Corps, in 1936, the chief executive is the sole organ of the federal government in the field of international relations. Still, the Constitution does give Congress a significant place in the field of foreign affairs. Its authority in that area arises from 2 sources. 1, from a number of the express powers, most especially the spending, the commerce, and the war powers, and 2, from the fact that the United States is a sovereign state in the world community. As the lawmaking body of the sovereign United States, Congress has the inherent power to act on matters affecting the security of the nation. For example, the regulation of immigration and the enactment of measures to combat terrorism here and abroad. So those are all ways that Congress weighs in on foreign policy. Now the next thing we're going to be talking about is the war powers. 6 of the 27 express powers set out in Article 1, Section 8 deal explicitly with the subject of war and national defense. Remember that here, too, Congress shares power with the chief executive. The Constitution makes the president commander-in-chief of the nation's armed forces. And, as such, the president dominates the field. So while the legislative branch of the government are the ones that hold the war powers, the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The U.S. Coast Guard inspects a boat suspected of smuggling illegal drugs. Administration of the Coast Guard falls under the war powers granted to Congress by Article 1, Section 8. The congressional war powers are, however, both extensive and substantial. Only Congress can declare war. So I want to pause there for just a moment and reinforce that. Only Congress can declare war. A president cannot declare war on another country. The president has to ask Congress for a declaration of war. It alone has the power to raise and support armies, to provide and maintain a navy, and to make rules for the governing of the nation's military forces. Congress also has the power to provide for calling forth the militia, today the National Guard, and for the organizing, arming, and disciplining of that force. And Congress is also given the power to grant letters of marque and reprisal and to make rules concerning captures on land and water. As you think about congressional war powers, consider this question. Does the Constitution give the President the power to make war in the absence of a declaration of war by Congress? Many argue that it does not, but more than 200 years of American history argue otherwise. Indeed, most presidents have used the armed forces of the United States abroad in combat without a congressional declaration of war. So while the proper protocols for using the armed forces is that a declaration of war by Congress is necessary, presidents have bypassed that in the past if in a situation where they needed to act expediently. In today's world, no one can doubt that the president must have the power to respond rapidly and effectively to any threat to the nation's security. Still, many people have long warned of the dangers inherent in a presidential power to involve the country in undeclared wars. So now we're going to talk about the War Powers Resolution. In the context of the War Powers of Congress, we must examine the War Powers Resolution, a statute enacted by Congress in 1973. The war-making power as it was exercised by Presidents Johnson and Nixon during the undeclared war in Vietnam moved Congress to enact the War Powers Resolution. That law provides that the chief executive can commit American military forces to combat abroad only 1. If Congress has declared war, or 2. When Congress has specifically authorized a military action, or 3. When an attack on the United States or any of its armed forces has occurred. So there are instances where Congress has allowed the president to bypass them. So that is the War Powers Resolution, where that comes from. If troops are ordered into combat in the third circumstance, the president is directed to report that fact to Congress within 48 hours. Any such commitment of military forces must end within 60 days, unless Congress agrees to a longer involvement, and Congress can end a commitment at any time. The constitutionality of the War Powers Resolution remains in dispute. A determination of the question must await a situation in which Congress demands that its provisions be obeyed, but the President refuses to do so. Okay, and that's going to be it, guys. I hope everybody's having a great day. If you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye.